This is the English service of Radio Algeria International. It's time for the news.
State Minister in charge of hydrocarbons and mines, Mohamed Arqab, has taken part in a meeting held via video conference of the Group of 8 of OPEC. The United Nations Security Council will hold an emergency meeting tomorrow Monday on the situation in Venezuela following the US operation launch on the country. UNRWA has affirmed that the inhabitants of Gaza are still living in disastrous conditions and called for the immediate lifting of restrictions imposed by the Israeli occupying authorities on the funneling of aid to the enclave. Hello and welcome to Radio Algeria International. I'm your host, Miriam Bershi. The State Minister in charge of hydrocarbons and mine, Mohamed Arqab, has taken part in a meeting held via video conference of the Group of 8 of the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC. The meeting was aimed at examining the world oil market and its prospects in the short term. In 2025, Algeria has embarked in a process of a comprehensive digital transformation in accordance with the firm instructions given by the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, regarding the imperative to complete the widespread implementation of digitalization in line with a strategic vision reflecting the state's desire to enshrine transparency in management and eradicate forms of corruption and bureaucracy. Mohamed Khatir had more details in this report.
The President of the Republic has made of this issue a key foundation for strengthening transparency and administrative efficiency, giving firm instructions to finalize the process of widespread digitalization. He stressed that the process was now an unavoidable necessity and that the integration of all sectors into this process was not an option, expressing his rejection of all the reasons put forward to justify any delay in this regard. In this connection, the High Commissioner for Digitalization, Ms. Mariam Ben Miloud, highlighted the extreme importance that President Tebboune attaches to the issue of digitalization and his personal monitoring of the process, which demonstrates the strong political will of the country's highest authority to achieve a comprehensive digital transformation in Algeria. As part of this comprehensive approach, last May, the Commission announced the content of the National Digital Transformation Strategy for 2030, which is the first national reference framework for the process of implementing this transformation. This strategy is also based on two major pillars. The first concerning the legal and regulatory framework governing, supervising and regulating the digital domain, on which the High Commission for Digitalization is currently working through the drafting of the Digitalization Bill. And the second concerns cybersecurity, including the protection of data and systems against cyber threats. Given the link between digital transformation and sovereignty and cybersecurity, the President of the Republic has decided to create a national information system security mechanism comprising the National Information System Security Council and the National Information System Security Agency. Furthermore, the High Commission endeavors to implement the National Information System consisting of the National Database, the National Interoperability System designed to ensure interconnection between different ministries and public bodies, and the National Decision-Making Support System. This system will provide reliable, up-to-date, and organized data to assist decision-makers in implementing and monitoring public policies.
The UN Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees has affirmed that the inhabitants of Gaza are still living in disastrous conditions and called for the immediate lifting of restrictions imposed by the Israeli occupying authorities on the funneling of aid to the enclave. In a message posted on social networks, it recalled that Gaza's population were in need of further food, medicine and shelters, and stressed that humanitarian aid was available and that humanitarian organizations were still carrying out their operations. Meanwhile, medical sources said that one Palestinian was killed in airstrikes carried out by the Israeli army against the northern part of the enclave in violation of the ceasefire enforced last October. In the meantime, the Israeli occupying forces pursued their acts of aggression on the West Bank, killing 2 Palestinians in the northern part of occupied Jerusalem. The news agency WAFA stressed that 5 people, all members of the same family in the town of Bethlehem, were arrested. This came as a large-scale campaign has been waged over the past few weeks by the Israeli army against various towns and municipalities of the Palestinian territory. The UN Security Council will hold an emergency meeting tomorrow, Monday, on the situation in Venezuela following the US operation launched on the country that resulted in the arrest of President Nicolas Maduro and his wife in the capital Caracas. The announcement was made by the spokesperson of Somalia's permanent mission to Venezuela, Khadija Ahmed, whose country currently ensures the revolving presidency of the UN Security Council. Yesterday, the United States launched a military operation against Venezuela and captured President Nicolas Maduro and his wife, who were later on transferred outside the country. Venezuela's Supreme Constitutional Court has appointed Vice President Delcy Rodriguez as acting president after President Nicolas Maduro and his wife were taken out of the country by US forces. In a ruling issued on Saturday evening, the court stated that Rodriguez's appointment was intended to ensure the continuity of government operations and maintain the stability of state institutions. The court emphasized that the transfer of power to the vice president is a constitutional procedure in light of the president's forced absence. Judicial authorities indicated that this decision is a temporary measure until a full legal framework is established to guarantee the continuity of state functions and public administration and to protect the country's sovereignty. It is worth noting that Delcy Rodriguez has previously affirmed her commitment to Venezuelan sovereignty and the necessity of releasing Nicolas Maduro and his wife. Meanwhile, some international parties have called for respect for international law and the preservation of stability in the region. The African Union has expressed grave concern over recent developments in Venezuela, including the US capture of President Nicolas Maduro and the military strikes carried out in the southern or South American country. In a communique released on Saturday, the continental body said it was closely monitoring the situation, describing the development as deeply troubling. Mohamed Khatel reports.
The AU reaffirmed its steadfast commitment to the core principles of international law, particularly respect for the sovereignty and territorial integrity of states, as well as the right of peoples to self-determination as enshrined in the Charter of the United Nations. It also stressed the importance of dialogue and the peaceful resolution of disputes, urging respect for constitutional and institutional frameworks in the spirit of good neighborliness, cooperation, and peaceful coexistence among nations. According to the AU, Venezuela's complex internal challenges can only be sustainably resolved through inclusive political dialogue led by Venezuelans themselves. The organization also expressed solidarity with the Venezuelan people and reiterated its commitment to promoting peace, stability, and mutual respect among nations and regions. It called on all parties involved to exercise restraint and responsibility and to respect international law in order to prevent any escalation of the crisis and preserve regional peace and stability.
Moving to the situation in the DRC, the United Nations Organization Stabilization Mission in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, MONUSCO, has expressed concern following the reports of a drone strike in Masisi Center in eastern DRC. In a message posted on social media, the UN mission condemned any attack, including by drones, targeting or affecting civilians and civilian infrastructure in Masisi Center in North Kivu province, the scene of clashes between the DRC armed forces and the M23 rebel group. The UN peacekeeping mission called for the strict compliance with the ceasefire and international humanitarian law and for priority to be given to the implementation of the peace agreements in force in the DRC. It also called for an independent verification of the facts and the establishment of responsibilities. According to a statement released by Médecins Sans Frontières, MSF, 42 people, including many children and women, wounded by shrapnel and suffering from other injuries, were admitted to Masisi General Referral Hospital following an airstrike that hit a residential area. 2 people died from their injuries upon arrival at the hospital. Masisi is one of the areas most affected by the armed conflict in the DRC. The city of El Obeid in North Kordofan state has been the target of a drone attack perpetrated by the Rapid Support paramilitary forces against a power station, causing a power outage across the city. Local sources reported that authorities are attacking or taking stock of the extent of the damage caused by the attack amid escalating tensions in various parts of Sudan stemming from the ongoing conflict between the army and the RSF. In a related development, the Sudanese military source announced the downing of 3 RSF drones before they could reach their targets in the city of Kenana in White Nile State. In South Kordofan, the RSF seized the town of El Bardab and an army garrison north of Kadugli, further intensifying the conflict in the region and complicating efforts to reach a peaceful solution or resolution despite international calls for de-escalation and the protection of civilians. Since the outbreak of armed conflict in April 2023, violent clashes between the army and the rapid support paramilitary forces have led to the death of tens of thousands and displacement of approximately 13 million, in addition to the destruction of vital infrastructure such as airports, ports and power stations, which has exacerbated human suffering and hindered access to basic services. Still in Sudan, a group of Sudanese doctors has warned of an imminent health and humanitarian disaster in the town of Dalang in South Kordofan State due to the prolonged siege and intensive bombing carried out by the RSF. In a statement, the group said that the town of Dalang is the target of daily shelling, causing death and injuries among civilians. It said that the blockade imposed by the rapid support paramilitary forces remains extremely severe and poses a risk of a humanitarian collapse, while hospitals and health facilities are suffering from acute shortages of food and essential medical supplies. The group called on humanitarian agencies and international organizations to intervene urgently to lift the siege, ensure the delivery of food and medical aid, and protect civilians and health personnel in order to prevent the situation from worsening. With this last bit of news, we come to the end of our news bulletin. Stay tuned to Radio Algeria International. As year 2025 draws to an end, it is remembered as one of the darkest and most defining years in the history of Gaza. When year 2025 began, the Palestinian territory was already deep into a prolonged and devastating war waged by the Israeli occupying forces. Entire neighborhoods had been razed to the ground, hospitals and infrastructure were destroyed, and hundreds of thousands of civilians were displaced. Many were forced to move repeatedly in search for safety. The scale of destruction left Gaza's social and economic life almost completely paralyzed. Throughout the first half of 2025, the Israeli military operations continued despite repeated international calls for a ceasefire. Airstrikes, ground incursions reinforced a reality in which the Palestinian population bore the heaviest burden. Schools were closed or destroyed. Families were separated on account of the repeated displacements, and daily life became a struggle for survival. Humanitarian organizations consistently warned that Gaza was facing one of the worst humanitarian crises in the world. Food shortages became widespread. Clean drinking water was scarce and medical supplies were critically limited. Aid deliveries were allowed were often insufficient to meet the enormous needs of the Palestinian population. Doctors describe working under extreme pressure exerted by the Israeli occupying authorities with limited electricity and overwhelmed facilities. By mid-year, global diplomatic pressure intensified. Regional powers, the United Nations and international mediators pushed for a halt to the fighting, emphasizing the urgent need to protect the civilian population and allow a large-scale humanitarian access. These efforts led to a ceasefire later in 2025, offering the first sustained pause in fighting in months. Politically, the situation remained deeply preoccupying. Talks about Gaza's future, reconstruction, funding, and long-term security continued without achieving progress. The Palestinian leadership stressed that a lasting peace would be impossible without addressing occupation, the blockade, or the political rights of the Palestinians, mainly their legitimate right to set up an independent state. which was formally recognized this year by France, the United Kingdom, Canada, Portugal, Belgium, Luxembourg, San Marino and Andorra, asked on whether there were any prospects for a lasting political solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in 2026. Our political analyst Hamoud Salhi has the following.
The Middle East in 2025 was defined by shift in the regional balance of power, not a collapse and not a decisive victory for any side, but a redistribution of weight. The old equilibrium built on deterrence and managed escalation no longer held. In its place emerged a balance shaped by sustained confrontation, a prolonged war, and strategic endurance. This shift was driven above all by Israel's role as a belligerent actor. Its multi-front military campaign, stretching from Gaza to Lebanon into Syria and toward Iran, sought to impose a new regional hierarchy through force. The objective was dominance, not deterrence. Militarily, Israel expanded its operational reach. Politically and strategically, it failed to translate aggression into regional supremacy. Instead, it activated counterbalancing forces that limited its gain and prevented a decisive shift in its favor. For the United States, the balance of power shifted in relative terms. Washington remains Israel's primary military and diplomatic backer and the most powerful external actor in the region. Yet its role narrowed. The United States managed escalation, protected shipping lanes, and held alliances together. It no longer designed the balance. American power remained visible, but its ability to shape political outcomes declined. This marked a clear loss of agenda-setting authority. Russia benefited from this adjustment. Moscow preserved its strategic presence in Syria while avoiding direct confrontation. By maintaining working relations with Israel, Iran, and regional states, Russia positioned itself as a secondary balancer. The prolonged crisis increased its diplomatic relevance without forcing a costly intervention. In balance of power terms, Russia gained influence through restraint. China's gains were quieter but deeper. By staying militarily absent, Beijing avoided entanglement while benefiting from U.S. overextension. Instability weakened Western focus and accelerated multipolar redistribution. China strengthened its role as an economic anchor and strategic alternative. Without altering the military balance, it benefited from a shift in leverage and attention. Across the region, alignments adjusted rather than collapsed. Gulf states intensified hedging strategies, prioritizing autonomy. Turkey expanded influence through selective engagement, acting as a flexible balancer. Iran absorbed sustained pressure, yet remained intact, reinforcing its position as a durable pole in the regional balance. Survival itself became a form of power. By the end of 2025, the balance of power had shifted, but not decisively. Israel gained tactical leverage without achieving dominance. Iran and its allies preserved counterweight capacity. The United States remained present, but less directive. Russia and China expanded influence indirectly. The Middle East entered an era where the balance favors endurance over victory. Power now belongs to those who can sustain a pressure, absorb cost, and operate within a permanent confrontation. In this system, war is no longer the breakdown of politics. It is the mechanism through which the balance of power is continuously recalibrated.
As winter begins, concerns grew once again, with hundreds of thousands of Palestinians still living in temporary shelters. International agencies and humanitarian organizations warned that disease and hunger could worsen if the ceasefire collapsed. Many Palestinians expressed fear that the calm might be temporary, a pause between rounds of violence, rather than a step towards peace in 2025. Gaza did not simply experience a war. It ended a year marked by loss, resilience, and suffering. The ceasefire offered a moment to breathe, but the territory's future remained uncertain, hanging between reconstruction and the risk of renewed conflict.
Located in the Bekhna province here in Algiers, the Belezma National Park is considered to be one of the most important national parks in this vast biodiverse country. Created in 1984 and covering an area of more than 262 square kilometers, the climate in Belezma National Park ranges from a dry semi-arid climate to a cool sub-humid climate, creating a variety of habitats for an even greater variety of wildlife. Belezma National Park is home to more than 440 species of flora and in excess of 300 species of fauna, 59 of which have the status of being protected. The Cuvier's gazelle, for example, is one of the protected species in the Belezma National Park. It is believed that there are only approximately 2,000 of these beautiful endangered animals remaining in 8 northern African nature reserves, including the Belezma National Park. The Dorcas gazelle is particularly suited to life in desert conditions. Although they enjoy a drink of water when they can get it, these graceful animals are able to survive their entire lives without drinking water by getting all the moisture they need from the plants they eat. The Dorcas gazelle is on the International Union for Conservation of Nature Red List of Threatened Species and is protected in the Belezma National Park. Atlas Barbary sheep, which is a species of goat antelope, is becoming a rare sight in its native North African habitat, although it has been introduced into parts of the United States. Visitors to the Belezma National Park may spot one of these elusive, solitary animals as they graze among any available plants in the semi-arid areas of the park. As rock dwellers, these sure-footed sheep find food and water in places which other grazing animals cannot reach, and this increases their ability to survive in seemingly inhospitable conditions. Algiers' most endangered animal is the serval, an attractive medium-sized wild cat. This slender, long-legged feline generally has bold dark spots on tawny-colored fur, although variations do occur. The preferred habitat of a serval is the savanna, with a readily available water supply. Although the serval is a master of camouflage, visitors to the Belezma National Park stand a good chance of seeing this increasingly rare animal. With more than 300 species of animals resident in the Belezma National Park, even if visitors don't manage to catch sight of the more elusive and rare species, there is still plenty to see in this beautiful part of Algeria.
إذاعة الجزائر الدولية